They grabbing for more. I just want to ask them to be sure. How much is enough? How much is enough? In flashy shares, they trick their man. They rob them old people land. How much is enough? How much is enough? Now, to bed on a beach, they fence every blade of grass. Mr. Millionaire, 14 is here. You're treating we rough, 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 rough. How much is enough? Beaches for everybody to share. And how much is enough? For the buying and the plumbing of everywhere. Boy, how much is enough? Who tell them to fence on the beach from we? Eh? How much is enough? But where the hell they get that authority? Boy, how much is enough? Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. Only finance companies and all the mega industries, commercial banks, they head the board. I talking frank, they live like lords, but they want more. They grab it for more. They are the big and tough. Woodbrook on the avenue. Look how quick they grab their food. Westmoreans, they back the sea to build some big monstrosity, and they want more. They grabbing for more with a total repugnance for the poor. How much is enough? How much is enough? The poor corporate fisherman, they're pushing them off the land. How much is enough? How much is enough? Hell, not because you're bathing dough. You can't treat poor people so. Mr. Millionaire, be more human here. You're treating we rough, 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 rough. Sing. How much is enough? I see the poor fisherman fighting for your life. How much is enough? Who go feed the child? Who go find the wife? Eh? How much is enough? I see them back in the sea. They still back in far, far, far. How much is enough? Like they go back till they back to Venezuela. Eh? How much is rocket? Ba-da-day-day. Rocket. Ba-da-ba-dee, ba-da-ba-da-da. The whole of Porter State is theirs, or their own, they have in shares. Anything to sell, they sell, and anything to buy as well, but they want more. They're grabbing for more. What the hell they doing that for? Dagaramas to the sea. How they get it? Don't ask me. It's we who managed to get the bait. Now I see it's them control the place and they want more. They're grabbing for more. I'm asking the same thing as before. How much is enough? How much is enough? Eh? Roxy Landmark now the face. They make that a fast food place. How much is enough? How much is enough? And spectacular tent was strong. They buy that and strip it off. Mr. Billionaire, the people say here, you're treating we rough, 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 rough. How much is enough? Like all the treasured landmarks and toys for you Eh?
How much is enough?
Leave Queen's Park alone, I'm begging you to, please.
How much is enough?
And the botanic garden where children play. Hey,
How much is
no,
enough?
we don't want no fast food restaurant there. No, no, no. Oh yeah. They own some radio stations too that bring in endless revenue. All the banks are doing great. They own the ranks, conglomerate, but they want more. They're grabbing for more. How come they still feel insecure? The nation needs its gents for sure. But at the end of the poor, they push this poor man off his feet. Choppy foot, he can't compete, and they want more. They're grabbing for more and nailing a sign outside the door. How much? Higher! Boom, bang! They own some radio stations too that bring in endless revenue. All the banks are doing great. They own the ranks, conglomerate, but they want more. They're grabbing for more. How come they still feel insecure? The nation needs its gents for sure. But at the end of the poor, they push this poor man off his feet. Choppy foot, he can't compete, and they want more. They're grabbing for more and nailing a sign outside the door. How much is enough? Eh? How much is enough? Lord, when the master call, I say, you can't take a cent of it. How much is enough? How much is enough? Look, your greed is beyond control. There's no need to own the world. Mr. Millionaire, throughout your career, you're treating we wrong, 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 wrong.
How much is enough?
Will another trillion make up your goal, eh?
How much
Look,
is enough?
help some 40 billion and save your soul, please.
How much is enough?
And at your next board meeting, please let them know. Tell them,
How much is
no, you can't keep on treating poor people so. No, no, no. Long live Calypso. Long live authentic Calypso.
How much? How much is enough? The more they get, the more they get, the more they want. How much is enough? The mighty joke. The mighty joke. Calvin Pope, the only man to, the only person to win the Calypso Monarch in Trinidad and Tobago 4 times in succession. 68, 69, 70, and 71. Not even Sparrow didn't do that. How much is enough? They're grabbing poor people land. They're grabbing poor people land. The billionaires, the governments. How much is enough? They're in Parliament today debating that land acquisition amendment to grab more land from poor people. An appropriate Calypso. As I would usually say, you give me a topic, I find a Calypso for it. That is why it's the greatest musical genre, the greatest musical genre in the world. You give me a topic, I find a Calypso. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101. It's a Wednesday evening. It's a week away from Christmas on the 18th of December, a week away from Christmas. Lots of you are beginning your shopping, and those of you who are traveling are maybe already home and ready for Christmas. You know, it's not what it used to be, but we're still making something of it. Good evening to you, all of you who are joining us from in Guyana. How about you up there in Linden? A special good evening to you. Real loyal, loyal followers up there. And I know there's some loyal followers. A pollster was talking to me about a recent poll. They're doing a lot of polls in Guyana right now, you know. Everybody doing their little polls. A lot of people from outside. And a pollster was telling me that we have some pockets of support there in Linden and the East Coast and Georgetown. Good evening, Linden. Good evening, Georgetown. Good evening, East Coast of Demerara. It's good to know that there are pockets of support there. You know, when the society is as divided as it is, and you have our people voting along ethnic lines, the parties that are grounded in the ethnic communities always have the first jump. And what you call third parties have a difficult time. But the pollsters are saying that, you know, there are pockets of support there. Years ago, Lani Grenier, a noted African-American lawyer, she had come up with this idea of giving people 2 votes. And it'll be interesting in Guyana, after people throw their vote for the 2 major parties, if they had a second vote, what they will do with it. It's always a challenge. But we have to continue the struggle. Good evening to all of you. Those of you who are joining us from Antigua and Barbuda. A lot of our Guyanese there. I know we have quite a few people living there who follow our program. Good evening to you. Good evening to you in St. Kitts Nevis. Some of you are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's not such a good time. The West Indies cricket team surrendered the first 2 T20 matches there. Really disappointing the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we have seen that script before. Good evening to all of you in the Caribbean, our Caribbean, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, one of my favorite islands, St. Lucia, Grenada, Piti, Martinique, and Carriacou. We always forget those 2 islands there, small islands. Good evening to you in Montserrat, some Guyanese there. And those of you in St. Martin, welcome to Politics 101. Dominica, welcome to Politics 101 on a Wednesday night. How much is enough? How much is enough? How much is enough? That is determined by when the people say enough is enough. human beings are rational beings, first and foremost. It doesn't mean that we don't act irrationally, but we are essentially rational beings. And even when we act irrational, there's a rationality to the irrationality. And that is why you don't force the struggle down people's throat. Welcome to Politics 101. Suspension. Suspend them. As we went off the air last night, I was on the Mark Benchop show later on in the night. And Mark broke the news that the president of the Teachers Union and the vice president were suspended. We confirmed that today, that the General Council of the Guyana Teachers Union suspended the president and the vice president for signing an agreement with the government against the will of the General Council and by extension, the membership. You all remember what happened there? You all remember? I spent some of today doing some research to see whether it ever happened in Guyana or the English-speaking Caribbean, and I couldn't find an instance where the workers manners their union leadership for signing an agreement against their will. And that is what the Teachers Union did today. This moment of history, this decade of the 2020s, I am predicted that when we begin to write the history of this period, the Teachers Union and the teachers will have front seat. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to you, Evelyn. I see my friend Orin, the security chief from Buxton, is on tonight, as he's always on. He's a faithful PNC Norton man. He don't play jokey. He and them just get it out in Buxton. They just got calm me down sometime and say, man, you know, can't talk nothing. Can't talk against Norton. He can take little criticism of the PNC. But when they start to talk down Norton, the security chief just be in their face. Yes, we were driving from somewhere. I think we were coming back from Morbice. We've been to, I can't remember what it is. I think it was a funeral. Yes, it was a funeral. And a girl from Buxton up there at the funeral, so we give her a drop. Yeah, we went to Hope Town to a funeral. So we give you a drop back to Buxton. And she said, well, she didn't think she voting. She didn't think she voting at the coming election because the coalition didn't do much for young Black people when they were in power. The security chief tell me, put you out the car. Put you out the car. Oh, you don't play. A couple of weeks after I ran into the young lady, and she said, well, you know, Miss Steins, I changed my mind. I'm going to vote. You convinced me. I was watching your program, and you convinced me, so I'll vote. You know, but the security chief, when she said she ain't voting, he said, put you out the car. That time. But she's been converted. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101. It's an area of our politics that we have to address. This morning on Kedaki Show, I was speaking about that. You know, people, we expect them to understand everything. you know, we expect them to pay attention to everything. And the fact of the matter is that people have their day-to-day lives, and unless something is connected directly to their day-to-day lives, it's not a priority for them. It doesn't mean that's not important. And so although there are some positive things, a lot of positive things the coalition did when it was in office, there is still that view among African Guyanese, especially the young people, that we did not do enough. And people may think it's a new thing. It's not a new thing. In 2019, ahead of the 2020 election, WPA went to 24 African Guyanese communities, starting at Anns Grove all the way up. I think the last place we stopped was in Stroudville on the West Coast. We went to 24 communities, 24 meetings. And young people were coming out to those. They weren't large meetings. They were held in school buildings. And so you had a 50-year, a 75-year, a 30, a 40. I think Beirut, we didn't have, of course, there was no school behind it, so we had to keep the meeting on the road, and you had about 400 people. But by and large, there were small meetings held in buildings, and for some reason, young people came out to those meetings. And we were telling them, making the case why they should vote for the coalition. And those young people fought us. I remember in Anns Grove, for example, the young people were in our faces. Dr. Hines, you still have to convince me why we should vote for the coalition. And we picked up there and then that the young people, many of them who had voted for us in 2011 and 2015, had some doubts in 2020. And we reported it to our colleagues. And we volunteered to go and to work among those young people and try to bring them on board. Because we were hearing that thing that you all didn't do anything for us. And they were relentless. They were, like I said, Anns Grove stood out. Anns Grove stood out. Those young people, we left there and I knew I didn't convince them. I knew that. I knew I didn't convince them. And we told our colleagues, we have a problem with about 20% of our base, because we would go into a community and you would have like 50 people come out. And of that, those 50 people, you know, they're coming to a WPA meeting. And they are coming to tell us that they are dissatisfied with what our government did for them. And we figured that if 50 of them are bold enough to come out to the meeting and to express themselves, they are at a minimum 10 by 50. There are about 500 of them in the community at a minimum. And we calculate that if you do that, you multiply that by 24 communities, that's a sizable portion of our base. And we were very concerned. The rest is history. Our colleagues didn't listen to us. We had some arrangements, and those arrangements fell through. We ran, as a coalition, we ran with David Granger because the polls were showing he's the most popular. And the polls were showing that 75% of our people feel that he was popular. Polls tell you about 70, they didn't tell you about the 25. So the turnout among African Guyanese at the last election was somewhere around 77, 78%. And the turnout among East Indians were 85% and upwards. I mean, and even then, if you go by what GCOM declared, the coalition lost by 1 seat. And when you take into consideration all the gymnastics that happen that we learn about later on, the coalition probably won, even with 20% of our people not turning out. We, according to what GCOM says, we lost by 1 seat. And according to what we were seeing in the boxes, after they opened the boxes, we probably won, even with 20% of our people not going out. And that is where I affirm the thesis that if we can up our turnout close to the Indian Guyanese turnout, we are in with more than a chance. And that is why, I'm saying you have to have your priorities right. Often we go chasing 1 or 2 seats in the base of our opponents while giving up 5 seats in our base. And I see signs of that already, I see signs of that already. I hope we and that is the thing about the coalition, is that AFC can target a certain kind of voter, WPA can target a certain kind of voter, the PNC, I am sure, can target all voters because they're the big party. But this thing that the coalition didn't do anything, it's not whether people are right or wrong. It is perception, their perception. And perception in politics often become reality. You have to go now and explain to them what you did for them or what you did that they benefited from. But you have to go beyond that. You still have to address their concern. And the best way to do it is to tell them, ask them to beg pardon. Says, we're sorry. There are certain things we didn't do right. There are certain things we didn't know. There are certain things we didn't understand. There are certain things we didn't anticipate. And you ask their forgiveness because you need their vote. And we couldn't understand why our partners didn't want to apologize to their own people. I think I have a fair sense of African Guyanese. They're not difficult to please. They can be contrary, or you could be contrary, but you all are not difficult to please politically. So beyond explaining what we did do and how we did do it better than the PPP, it's about addressing our people's fears. And our people have fears, especially the young people. Especially the young people. And we have to go there. So tactics and strategy are going to be very important in this coming election. Tactics and strategies are going to be very important in this coming election. Because we have to address that question that we did. It's easy to tell people, well, the coalition didn't have the money. No, yeah, they know that. And that is true. But you still have to embrace a politics where you look after your base. And not just look after them, but they must believe that you look after them. There's a reason that people still talk about Burnham. Because they can point to things that benefited the support base. national service, for example. So many young black people at that time remember how national service changed their lives. In those early years when infrastructure was scarce, people still remember the Demerara Harbor Bridge. How revolutionary that was. You get a bridge across a big river. It was a big thing back then. People still remember the Guyana Marketing Corporation when Brother Quayana was the chairperson there. And GMC would give loans to farmers, buy the pig, buy the fowl, and then they pay back because they sell back to GMC. And I remember as a small boy, the truck coming in and you get a whole bag a provision for $1. People still remember those things because they felt that those things were particular to their lives. And so, in the kind of society we are, while you have to have programs for everybody, that is, programs that benefit people across the lines, you still have to have programs that are particular to the ethnic groups. And they are vulnerable. All ethnic groups are vulnerable. All ethnic groups are vulnerable. But the vulnerabilities are different. Amerindians have their own issues. They experience the vulnerability different, and they have to. Africans experience it different from Indians. And the coalition government can say, look, as much as they get costs for knocking off sugar workers, they also pumped billions into sugar. Billions. They pumped more into sugar than they pumped into any other areas of the political economy. And sugar benefit East Indians more than other groups. So in a sense, they pumped resources into the East Indian community. Even though they get costs about how they knock off, they pump billions. They didn't come in and say, we stop pumping billions. They pump billions. When you move to where Africans are located in the economy, which is in the public service, they didn't pump billions into the public service. And that is an error that we have to correct. When you pump into sugar, East Indians see that, understandably, as affecting them. No, they're not going to be, because the PPP in their ears, so they're not going to give you credit for it, but they know that when you pump into sugar, it's them you pumping it to. Our government, coalition government, didn't engage in collective bargaining. So when the PPP come in, they continue doing it and they felt emboldened because they said your own government didn't do it. There was no collective bargaining with the public servants. And so there are things. We are a multi-ethnic society. And you have to have a balance between general policies that benefit everybody and then particular policies that benefit the different ethnic groups. And I think as a coalition, we fell down on that. I don't think the AFC was too keen on the ethnic thing. The PNC is always iffy about the ethnic thing. So you had the two big parties in the coalition, meaning the ones that had power. I don't think they had a sense of the racial motion. When you look at the AFC, for example, they had agriculture, public infrastructure. When you look at those two ministries, those are very productive ministries. Those are ministries that employ plenty people. The FC had productive ministries. The infrastructure, public infrastructure determined where roads were. I remember fighting to get a couple of roads done in Buxton. Towards the end, I think they did one road. I asked them for 3. I think they did 1.5. I remember having to fight, and I had a good relationship with Brother Pato. I remember having to work with Raphael Trotman towards the end, because I had a good relationship with him and was through Raphael and so on. I intervened. We managed to get one road and I think half of another road done in Buxton, a place like Buxton, where we got 99% of the vote. I hear Jack Dio saying, "What David Hines ever do for Buxton?" Well, I wasn't a minister, but I was always making representation and talking and trying to get things done for the village. It was not my place to go up on a soapbox and talk about that. I can talk about it now. But a place like that, like Buxton, all our roads should have been done. It should have been. But you see, our governors, they understood colorblind governance. They didn't understand the other type of distribution. I've said, I remember working with Winston Jordan on what is known as the SLET program. And I had organized 25 communities, projects from Dartmouth right down to Buxton, I think. Working with through Coffee 250. And we organized these communities, had their projects ready. And Winston Jordan was very, very cooperative. I mentioned it to him, and I remember it was Aubrey Norton and myself. We met him at the place we all used to go, and it was a Saturday afternoon. Aubrey, of course, was dealing with youth, and I was dealing with the African villages. And we thought, he said, "Come Monday." And we went there Monday, without an appointment, and we worked, and Winston Jordan was very instrumental in getting that, what they call the SLET project. And like I said, I had 24 communities with their projects. I remember in that month, I think we were going to set up a sewing factory. And all of that was set. But the money had to be housed in a particular ministry. And when the money went to that ministry, it's no longer Winston Jordan. So I had to go and deal with the minister in that ministry. And what they did in that ministry is that they advertised, and the criteria to get the grants, the African Guyanese community couldn't meet the criteria. Only one community, Plaisance, got half of a project. So they set the criteria outside of the capabilities of the African Guyanese communities. So, for example, they said, well, you have to have a building ready. And in a lot of the African Guyanese communities, they didn't have a ready building to house a lot of these projects. So the criteria that they set, wipe them out. And that happened under our government. Jordan was very cooperative. But when it went to the other ministry, first thing when I turned up with the ministry, the man who was the PS, I didn't understand why he was blocking the thing. And then a couple of weeks later, I went to cricket and I ran into Jack Dio, CPL. And Jack Dio is always very nice when I run into him. And he came across and we chatted funny thing. And then he turned to the man who is the PS in this ministry and said, David, this is so-and-so. And I watched Mr. So-and-so. Mr. So-and-so watched me because Mr. So-and-so know that he blocked me from me 24 projects. But I never know Mr. So-and-so was a PPP man till Jack Dio introduced the man to me. And so those were some of the challenges we had under we did not look after our people. And it is not that we didn't have a chance. Like I said, Jack Dio discussed me and asked me what I do and what I didn't do and so on and things. There are people on this program right now who remember those projects. 24 of them. We went from village to village. And we get the projects right up and so on, everything. All we ready now is for the grants. The money thing, and then it go to this ministry, and the minister and the PS they set the criteria outside of the capabilities of the African Guyanese community. Only peasants get half a project. My village, Buxton, didn't get anything. I think we had a project there for a daycare center, because we knew that, people want to go out at nights and they got young children. And the idea was that we're going to have this daycare center. It was going to provide employment for young people, training, employment for them. But, people, could take their children at nights when they want to go out to this daycare center. That was our project in Buxton. I think we had another one. I can't remember what the other one was. But none of those projects. And these were all projects that were going to generate wealth for people and for the community. We missed the trick. And I hope this time when we get in, we don't make that same mistake. I'm not saying to discriminate against another community. No. As I said, you pump a lot of money into sugar, and you also should have pumped a lot of money into the African Guyanese community. I understand a fair share was pumped into the Amerindian community. Really, African Guyanese came out the loser in terms of the amount of monies that were directed. There was the rate project, which was the agriculture project that was to reinvigorate agriculture in the communities Buxton, BV Triumph, Ithaca, and Moko. And it was a very good project. Again, Winston Jordan was instrumental in that. I think Granger put his full support behind it. And they got the money, they got the loan. And that was the first thing when the PPP come in, they closed down that project. They closed down that project. We were making some strides in Buxton with it. We got a lot of the young people to go into the back. Some of the young people are still there. I was down in the back dam about 2 years ago, and some of the young people who we got started with that project, they're still farming behind there. And we were trying to get a farm to market road in Buxton there. I was working with Raphael Trotman and trying to get some private contractors. And we were almost there. We were almost there in trying to get that road for the young people at the back there who were farming. But then the election came and that was that. And the PPP closed down the project. So there are things that we have to. You see, we didn't go giving people $40,000 at $20,000 here. That was not the approach of the coalition. People remember money, the intangible things. They're not likely to remember that firsthand. And so you have to be there with them and remind them. Now we know cash grant. When the WPA proposed the cash grant in 2018, all kinds of story you hear. People gonna spend all the money, people gonna this. Look how people jump in Panmati for 100,000. And the WPA was saying by 2024, our people would have gotten $1 million per family, per household. In 2018, 2024 come, the PPP is giving them 100,000. But they will remember the 100,000 because we didn't pass legislation and legislate the $1 million by or 10% of the thing. That is what we missed the trick. It was only when WPA, on the day they were launching the campaign, we had an emergency meeting with Mr. Granger, because I can say it now, we threatened to pull out from the coalition on the day they were launching the campaign. And Mr. Granger agreed to meet with us. And it was only then that he agreed to the cash transfer. But by then it was too late. They couldn't legislate it. Had we legislated that thing, guaranteeing 10%, the equivalent of 10% of our takings from oil, our people wouldn't be jumping over each other for $100,000 now. They would have been getting close to $1 million per household. $1 million per household with a family of 4, that's $250,000 per individual, including the children. And we get our people, the PPP get our people jumping over each other for $100,000 per vote per adult. So the coalition missed some tricks. And I'm saying that we got to correct them. You look after your base. And you can do it without discriminating against each other. My problem with the PPP looking after its base is not that they're looking after their base, it's that they're not being equitable. If you give in cane cutters $250,000, give public servant $250,000. They're in the same category. As I said last night, cane cutters don't make sugar. But them cutting the cane is essential to the final making of sugar. Public servants don't run a business, but the teachers teach the business people and prepare them. The public servants have to keep the bureaucracy going. So my problem with the PPP is not that it's looked after its base, it's that it is discriminating against other bases. So we got to learn. We have to learn. Now to the union and the suspension. You all remember I was very hard on Mark Light. Very, very hard on Mark Light. Because from what I gathered, he went against the wishes of his union. The union members claim, the general counsel claim, he's saying they voted 17-5 for the package. And they now vote 22-8 to suspend for agreeing to the package. What the people said is that when he went to them with the package, he misled them. That is why they voted the way they voted. And when they found out that they were misled, they gave him a directive not to proceed. So he went to them, allegedly, misled them, You all can remember the story. And then when they got the real story, they tell him, don't worry with that thing. Do not accept less than 30%. The general secretary, for example, wasn't there. So Mr. Light and the vice president went against the wishes of not only their own general council, but their own membership. Because apparently the general council met with the wider membership afterwards. And the wider membership said, no, sir, no, sir. Do not accept anything below 30%. And they went there and accept 10%. And unprecedented, the union has suspended them. Now, one has to feel for trade unionists, because sometimes you're caught in between what your membership wants and what the employer wants. And when you have an employer like this government, which is very clear about what it's going to give to public servants, there is no room there. But your members are saying, find the room. And we are going to be out there for 75 days to help you to find the room. And they found the room because they went to court. And the court basically took the side of the teachers. And the government disobeyed the court. I still to this day don't know why the teachers did not go back to the court. Henry Jeffrey asked that question too. Now we understand why they probably didn't go back to the court. They had the top leader who had no fight in him. He had no fight in him. Now people are saying that he's PPP, and that don't bother me too much, you know. You can be PPP, but when you're representing workers, you're not PPP. You're GTU. If Mr. Light is a PPP member, they put out pictures with any red shirt and so on. That's his personal business. You can be a PPP member and still support your workers. I remember back as 1978-79, the president of the teachers union was a man named Basil Blair. I know his son good because his son married to a girl from Buxton, and he came to live in the village, and we used to be glad to talk with him because his father is a big union man. And then Basil Blair was PNC for all, from what you could tell. And, you know, he and Burnham were apparently friends because Burnham would call him Basil. But he was the president of the teachers union, and I think even president of the TUC at the same time. And he stood up to Burnham. He represented his workers. He was a friend of Burnham. He probably was a PNC member. But he stood up for his workers. He had a rough time, but he stood up for his workers. So I don't think the issue is Mark Light and whether Mark Light has a right to belong to whatever party he belongs to. So if you belong to the PPP, that's his personal business. But as president of the teachers union, you are representing teachers against the government. You are not a member of the government. You may be a member of the ruling party, but you're not a member of the government. You are president of the teachers union. And if the teachers union, the teachers are saying, we are backing you. We are going to stay out. And they stayed out there for 75 days. They risk losing their job. They miss losing pay. They managed to get the court on their side. The court reprimanded the government. And from that position of strength, you go and take not even half of what the teachers ask you to take. Dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty. And so therefore the teachers union has acted. The General Council has suspended the president of the union and the vice president. The union did it. Not the PNC, not the AFC, not the WPA, the union. By a vote of 22-8. So there's a 2/3 majority. Almost 75% of the General Council voted to suspend them. And it's difficult, as I said, to see trade unionists being treated in that way, but they brought that on themselves. They signed a package that they agreed with. The General Council didn't agree with it. The wider membership didn't agree with it. And they went ahead and signed it. And so they've been reprimanded by their union. They've been managed by their union. I don't know what the law says about suspension, how long they will be suspended and so on. I don't know. But I think the teachers have broken new ground. And I think they should embolden other workers. I don't want every day to see unions suspending their leaders. It doesn't look good. But sometimes one union has to do it to stop this thing. This thing about union bosses selling workers out is an old problem. But in 2024, when in capitalist America, the president of America went and stood on the picket line, the unions in America in 2024 won unprecedented raises for them in capitalist America. And in Guyana, our unions are buckling to a government that is bullying them. The Guyana Teachers Union the leaders of the DTU didn't have to buckle. Mr. Light didn't have to buckle. He had his workers behind him, meaning his membership story behind him. He had the court behind him. So he didn't have to buckle. One could come to the conclusion that he sold out his membership. Because he had the two things he had going. He had the membership behind him. And they weren't sitting in their living room, they were on the road. And he had the court behind him. And yet he accepted. I don't want to make a comparative analysis, but the PSU didn't have the code behind them. They didn't have their workers on the road behind them. So you may cut them some slack. But the teachers had their workers out there risking their jobs, risking their livelihood. They had the court behind them. Look how much cost justice can soon get for standing with the workers. And in the end, those two leaders sign what they sign. It can only be seen as a sellout of their workers. You sell your workers out, obviously against their wishes. And the workers have taken action. Nobody wants to see workers suspending their leaders, their union leaders every day. It doesn't look good. But I have, as a political analyst, as a political activist, to support the teachers, the General Council of the Teachers Union. I remember saying at the time that we will support whatever action. I think the WPA said that in a statement. We will support whatever action the workers take against their leaders. And the workers' organization, they have now taken action. And I hope this is a wake-up call to other union leaders. I hope this is a wake-up call to other union leaders. You know, I asked Mr. Light to come onto Politics 101 and to talk to workers and talk to our community. He make all kind of excuses, he never came. And he was on all those PPP-aligned programs, all the PPP-aligned programs. So, as I said, I don't know whether he's a PPP member, and if he's a PPP member, that is his business. I'm not judging him by which party he belonged to. I'm judging him by whether you went against the wishes of your membership or not. And they went against the wishes of the membership. And by a vote of 22-8, you all do the quick math, and you all will see it's more than a 2/3 majority. That's a landslide. They vote to suspend them. But you see, elections have consequences. Vanessa Kissoon ran against Mark Light. And Mark Light won the race against Vanessa. Would Vanessa Kissoon have gone against the wishes of the membership of the union, against the General Council? I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt it. But the majority of teachers voted for Mark Light. Elections have consequences. I can't see Vanessa Kissoon doing what Mark Light did. I mean, people change, but I have to go not by sometime in the future. I have to go by what I'm seeing now. It was a crime against his own union. And the union has acted. And I hope it's a wake-up call for other union leaders. Workers have to be out there. I saw NASI, which is a PPP-aligned union. NASI is out there fighting for GPL workers, because apparently they give the other workers 10%, they give GPL workers 8%. And the NASI leadership at GPL out there and saying, no, if you're giving everybody 10%, you gotta give me 10%. And this is a PPP-aligned union. I think there are things in Guyana that we have to set right. We have to set right. This morning on Kedaki's program, I revealed that, they were raising issues of the members of parliament on this bill that is threatening African ancestral lands. And I defended the MPs. Because none of the MPs there was appointed to look after African Guyanese interests. The leadership of APNU didn't even think they needed to get a couple of MPs to look after African Guyanese interests. When you look across to the PPP side, they got MPs there who were looking after Indian people interests. Amerindian people interest. Repuduman daughter is the head of the Hindu organization. She is there to look after Hindu interests, Indian people interests. Our leadership didn't think that they needed to put 2 parliamentarians in there to look after African Guyanese interests. And that is why I am not beating up on the members of parliament for not raising the alarm about the threat of this amendment that they're discussing there today. And I was making the point that thank God for Mr. Granger, he set up the Ministry of Social Cohesion. And I was appointed to work with them in that ministry on social cohesion. What it was is really ethnic cohesion, racial cohesion. And after 3 to 4 months, I was fired from the ministry, not for something I did wrong in the ministry, but because in my column, I disagreed with the government giving itself a 50% raise. I was fired after 3 months. Now, in a ministry like that, you bet your bottom dollar that I would have looked after African Guyanese interests, among other interests. Government didn't care about that. All they care is that I shouldn't be critical of the government. Knock me off. They later knocked me off from Chronicle. So I had the distinction of my own government knocking me off 2 times. And somebody called in this morning and said that the government was right to knock me off because I should not be critical of my government and that the PPP is giving themselves money and they're thieving money. And I should not have been critical of the government giving 50%. And my response was that I hope that is a minority position in the Black community. Because you cannot morally be telling the other side they must not do something when you're tolerating it in your community. I go to sleep at night because when I hammer the PPP, they can't watch me and tell me you didn't say the same thing against your own government. I did. And it puts me on a stronger moral footing to be critical of them. And so my point here is that we have to change some of our mindset. We have to hold our government accountable so that we can hold the government of the side accountable. We have to. Someone asked me, so if you disagree and the government, the coalition government fire you 2 times, why you still want to go back in a coalition with them? Why don't you go and talk to the PPP? Why don't they do the WP? And I have to say, don't take your eyes on past me, somebody. The coalition government fire me personally. But the firing of me personally is not going to push me to go to the enemy. Oh no. They didn't make me so. They didn't make me so at all. They can fire me 10 times. It don't bother me. But I cannot work with the PPP inside the PPP because ideologically I don't share anything with the PPP. I don't. I am driven by working class solidarity. That's where I come from. I may not be a member of that class anymore, but that's the class that I come from, and a lot of my family and friends and villagers belong to that class. And I want to see that class be liberated from poverty. And so my politics is driven by that class. I don't have a problem with people who are millionaires and billionaires, but I from a class standpoint, that's not a class that I defend. I defend the working class, not the billionaire class. And then I defend my race. I defend my race. And in that regard, if you're a black rich and black upper class, I'm still defending you as black, not as upper class, but as black. And the third pillar of my politics is shared governance. That I believe that no single party or no single race should govern Guyana by itself, and that all races should govern. So, working class, racial equality, and shared government. Those are the three foundations of my political worldview, my outlook. And the PPP doesn't share that with me anymore. The PPP is not committed to the working class anymore. The PPP is hostile to black people, discriminatory to black people. And the PPP doesn't believe in sharing government. What am I going to do? Say I go in and work with the PPP because the coalition knocked me off. No. The coalition is not hostile to black people. It may commit acts of omission. As I described earlier tonight, there were some acts of omission when it comes to black people, but they're not hostile to black people. PNC is not hostile to black people. It is debatable whether the PNC is still grounded in the working class as it used to be. I don't want to go there because all parties now are dealing with neoliberalism and they have to make deals with the rich and so on, you know. But when it comes to shared governance, the PNC has committed to shared governance. So what do I have in common ideologically with the PNC? As it stands now, shared governance. They're not hostile to black people. And like I said, I don't want to talk about their commitment to the working class. I assume they are. But I have nothing in common with the PPP. Nothing. And as I said, I may have been critical of the coalition, but I never brought down the coalition. The WPA never used its one seat to do what Sharon Das did. And you heard all kind of rumors that when they heard that some people may have voted against them in the no confidence, they thought that Dr. Rupnarayan was one. They don't know the WPA. We would be critical, but we made a commitment that we were not going to bring down the government. We didn't bring down the government. We were critical. We were critical, but we didn't bring the government down. We didn't use the one seat to bring the government down. We didn't. And that must count for something. It was immoral to bring the government down in that way. If you didn't like what the government was doing, Mr. Sharon Das, just resign and let your party replace you with somebody who is more comfortable with what the government is doing. But to bring down a government, and I heard Sharon Das the other day confessing that what he should have done was to go to the leader of the list, who was then Dr. Harold Lutchman, and to make his complaints to Harold Lutchman before moving to a no confidence vote. No confidence. And in any case, you are part of a coalition. It was an AFC government. And if you were going to vote that way, you ought to have talked to the other parties in the coalition, because you're bringing down their government. It's not an AFC government you're bringing down. So everything was immoral about that act. And I live to see Sharon Das now complaining that the PPP has no time for you, begging them for contract. Then I give you, or they give you and then I pay you money. Jack Dio don't talk to you. He said, we name orphan taking number and say you're gonna call you. 5 weeks back, orphan and call you. So he announced that he forming his own party to contest against the PPP. These are his words the other night on the Friend Freddy program. God not sleep. God not sleep. It was immoral to have done what he did, even if the law allowed for a no confidence vote. It wasn't your party government. You brought down the government of the PNC and the WPA and all the other parties in that coalition. It was immoral what he did. And as much as I was critical, we were critical of the behavior of our senior partner in the coalition. We did not bring down the government. It was never even debated in our party. Were we under pressure to leave the coalition? A lot of our members, we have lost members. WPA lost members, senior members, because they felt that we should have pulled out. And we didn't pull out because as we pulled out, we would have sent a signal that we are the spoilers. And we fought in our party. We lost members, senior members. But we stayed because we felt we had made a commitment. And the AFC, the coalition was murdering people, children on the road. It wasn't beating up poor people on the road when they protest. If the coalition had gone there, then that was another story. But the human rights record of the coalition is second to none in the history of Guyana. They are the best human rights record of all post-colonial governments in Guyana. They weren't. They handled the sugar thing badly. Not that they were wrong in terms of right sizing, but they weren't sensitive to the ethnic consequences of it. When White knock off all them public servants because the IMF tell you to do so, that impact was on African Guyanese. And he handled it badly. That thing has decimated the Black community to this day. To this day. And so you have to be sensitive that although you needed to right size sugar, you don't in an ethnic community knock off workers of one ethnic group like that. And they were advised against it. So yes, they did some things which was bad judgment. Bad judgment. Because like I said, they pumped billions of dollars into the sugar industry. So they weren't anti-Indian. They weren't anti-Indian, as the PPP told Indian people. If they were anti-Indian, anti-sugar, they wouldn't have pumped money. They honestly wanted to downsize, to right size, sorry. And they were continuing what the PPP had started. LBI and all them estates, the PPP shut them down. but they weren't sensitive to the ethnic thing. You see, it's a fault line in Guyanese politics. That our politicians feel that if they deal with race, they're going to lose votes of the other race. So what? Deal with the reality. And because they didn't deal with race, they couldn't see that there was going to be a racial backlash, even when you're doing the right thing, which was right sizing. You still have to be racially sensitive. Look how racially insensitive Jack D and them are to black people. And we black people don't like it. And we have every right not to like it. You have to be racially sensitive in a place like Guyana. Sometimes you have to temper things you're doing because you may hurt another group. Look, there are three things that cause ethnic conflict in the world. When people feel that they're dispossessed of resources, land, as they're trying to do with black people right now. When they feel disenfranchised, as black people are feeling after what they saw when the boxes opened in 2020, they knew they were disenfranchised. And then when they're dishonored, when you dishonor a racial group, and that's what the PPP is doing, dishonoring black people, forcing black people to fight for $100,000, forcing black people to do things that they would not normally do, forcing black people to crawl to them. A white man named Tony Gregg, South African in 1976. West Indies is going to England to play. And he says, oh, these West Indians, when they're good, they're good. But when their backs are against the wall, they grovel. And I intend to make them grovel. The world paid a price for that because for the next 20 years, West Indies bust everybody ass. The longest a team dominate a team sport in the history of mankind. You dishonor some black men and you are a white South African during apartheid. Every time they come to bowl to him, Roberts and Holden and them said they found the energy to bowl 5 miles faster, 10 miles faster. At the end of the series, Tony Gregg got down on his knees and he crawled into the pavilion to say sorry. And that's what the PPP is doing. They're making black people grovel. Look, you get a soldier who's the ACDC or whatever you call it. He's a soldier. And he's making a political statement in him, Edgel. I don't know if he related to the reverend. But here is a soldier, and Mark Archer wrote a letter in today's paper. You are the ADC or whatever they call it. You are not a political, that's a military thing. You are going to make a political statement. But that is what they're doing to black people. Look, these little children who are working at Chronicle, mostly young black girls. And they're sending them to come to PNC, AFC, and WPA press conference to interfere with me. And those children, that's not what they go to Chronicle to work for. They want to be journalists. But they're turning them into water fetchers. I know. I know. Those young people don't want to do that. But that's what they're doing to our young black people. They're making them grovel, crawl on their bellies. And that is so dishonorable. And we can quarrel with some black people for doing it. We can quarrel with them because some of them know better. But my rage is at the people who are doing it, who are making them do it. I will not be part of any government that's going to make Indian people crawl. I'm making it very clear. No government is going to make Indian people crawl. I would be part of. Indian people don't deserve that. And black people don't deserve to be groveling. But that is what the PPP is doing. They're making black people grovel. Dishonoring an entire race. Because when they grovel, it's not only them are being dishonored, all of us are being dishonored. And we live in a society where black leaders are afraid to talk about it. Indian people may be discriminated against in Guyana, and I'm sure they are, the Indian working class. But they're not on their bellies crawling. They're not groveling. And our leaders, black leaders, don't talk. And when you don't confront a problem, then it's there, and then you make mistakes. Even if I make up with the PPP for everything else, I cannot make up with the PPP for making black people grovel. There's absolutely no way I can forgive these taps for what they're doing to black people. And we should not forgive them. I am comforted by the fact that this will not go on forever. Because black people are human beings too, and human beings don't grovel forever. They do not grovel forever. One day, Congati. We learn that. One day, Congati. I hope when the Congati time come, those who are making our people grovel, they will be able to meet their God. Sheriff John Brown always against me. Every time I plant a corn, he cut it down. And one day, you all know who are quoting it. Robert Nestor Marlin, I shot the sheriff. One day I saw Sheriff Brown, and I shot the sheriff. I didn't shoot the deputy. What is to be, let it be. That point of freedom, one day, every day, bucket will go well. One day, the bottom must drop out. If the PPP leadership doesn't understand that human logic, I'm inviting them to go and listen, Bob Marley, I shot the sheriff. Brother Bob is making a human analysis. Every day, every time I plant the corn, Sheriff John Brown just cut it down. Just cut it down. That is why Bob also said, we jamming. We jamming. There comes a time of freedom. No bullet can stop me now. You all remember that one? No bullet can stop me now. You reach that point of freedom when fear goes through the window. And that's where they're pushing black people. Do I want black people to get to a point of, I always say two things. Two things about black people. There may be other things. Black people ignorant and they mind bad. And let me put that in folk terms. When we say you ignorant in folk terms, we know what you mean. I mean, you stupid. It means that when you get in your ricketics, Move out the way. And when I say black people mind bad, mean when they make up their mind, move out the way. And those who are making black people gruff, they don't understand those truisms about African people. We can take shit, sometimes too much shit. But there comes a time when you get ignorant. All of you all know about that the mother or the father who never used to beat. They're not beat. But when you push them, and they hold for beat, you have to hold them back because they're beat through. All of us had that experience with our parents. They got some parents used to like beat, some not beat. But when you push them to the point to beat, my mother beat me one time. One time, my mother beat me. My auntie used to do the beating, not my mother. But my mother beat me one time because me eat out a whole jar bottle and not butter, peanut butter. Till to know me and peanut butter get a certain relationship. Me eat plenty of that thing. Eat out the whole bottle. My mother never beat me. When the lady all for beat me, she said, "Oh, if you eat out half and left half for your body and sister them, you eat out all." The lady beat me. My auntie was the beat person to come and hold she back. That is the African. And the African and she come out there. She said, "Oh, you eat out the whole bottle, eat half, no left for your sister and body them." And the lady put a licking. She not done. She not done me. Auntie had to come hold she back. That is where they're pushing black people. And I hope we don't get to that point. I hope we don't get to that point. Because those things have lasting consequences, yeah? Look at what is happening around the world. Look at what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. You think the Palestinians will forget that? If we thought there was going to be peace after what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, I don't see peace happening in my lifetime. Because you don't go the lengths to where you are going. And that's what the PPP is doing. The PPP are our local Israelis. And black people are the Palestinians. We have to talk truth. And sometimes we don't like to hear the truth. But the truth always sets you free. At the end of the day, as I said, the first line has to be the removal of the PPP from office. We have to deal with them later on because they represent half the country. And I can't tell East Indians who will vote for. If East Indians vote for the PPP, then the PPP has a right to share government, But I am not prepared to live under the PPP running government on their own anymore. And I'm saying to African Guyanese, I'm saying to Indian Guyanese dissidents, I'm saying to Amerindian dissidents, you do not have to live with that. You should not want to live under one party PPP government anymore. They are our local Israelis. And they do it with a smile on their face. Beyond that smile is a scowl, a nasty scowl. We have our work cut out, and we must face we burden. We must face we burden. We must face we burden. We come in peace, and we go in peace. We're not looking for trouble. But we don't want people to continue to trouble we. And people are troubling we every day. Every single day. I have no apologies to make. They say I invoke the term slave catcher. And I am inciting black people. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm inciting black people against slave catchers. Yes, I am. And you got black slave catchers and you got Indian slave catchers. Yes, I am. I'll be going against everything that is moral in the world if I did not incite people against those who would want to return you to the slave plantation. No chains around my feet, but still I'm not free. I'm still here in captivity. I'm still here in captivity. No chains around my feet, but I'm not free. I'm still here in captivity. Set the captives free. Set the captives free. And if you don't set them free, the captives have a right to set themselves free. Captives have a right to set themselves free. We were not born captives. And we cannot live forever as captives. When Mr. Burnham overstepped his boundaries, although black people loved him, many of them pushed back against him. And if you push back against overstepping by your own, and then others are putting you in captivity. Mr. Burnham never put black people in captivity. He overstepped his boundaries. These ones are putting you in captivity. And if you start, your parents and grandparents stood up against Mr. Burnham, who they love, why the hell you have to tolerate them crawling on your bellies? A man bowing down to the officers' mess, the police mess there the other day. A black man bowing down for kiss. Was it to kiss girlfriend Ali Ring and all kind of a debate about what he ought not have been doing that. Not in today's Guyana. What the hell are you doing bowing down to a man who is hammering black people? No debate for me. Black people know thyself, yeah? Know thyself. Know thyself. No debate. No sensible, self-respecting black man ought to be doing that. And people are debating what is his intention. That is part of our problem as a people. We don't call shit. We call it kungsi. And the difference between kungsi and shit, kungsi is little people shit, picnic shit. Kungsi, little picnics kungsi. And we just call shit kungsi. Because I love you all. Denise, I'm from University of Iflot. You're right. I love you all, always. Always. And if we are one group standing, if I'm one man standing, I ain't turning my back on you all. Even when you all cuss me, I ain't turning my back on you all. Even when you all government knock me off 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, I ain't turning my back on you all. Because this is not about me. It's about a people who have given so much to this country, and this country has not repaid us a quarter. I plant a cabin. I build a cabin, and I plant a corn. Then my people before me slave for this country. Now you watch me with scorn and want to eat out my corn. When black people were here slaving for this country, Where was Jack Dew? Where was Irfan Ali? Not on those slave plantations. Didn't my people before me slave for this country? I build a cabin. I plant the corn. Now you look me in my face with corn and want to eat out all my corn. And you tell me about one guy, and I don't want to be one with people like you. I want to be one with Indian Guyanese who respect my humanity and I respect their humanity. Then we can talk about oneness. But if your leaders don't respect my humanity and you are not telling your leaders that they're wrong, I question you. I question you. In the same way I question Black people who love Burnham but didn't want to admit to his fault. I question them. Don't come to me with one Guyana. The oppressed and the oppressor can never be one. Never. We can never be one. The slave master and the slave could never be one. The enslaver and the enslaved could never be one. Keep your one Guyana. I'd rather live in two Guyana where my humanity is respected than in one Guyana where my humanity is not respected. Keep your one Guyana. I'd rather live in three Guyana where my humanity is respected than one Guyana where my humanity is desecrated every day. Black people, you all got to toughen up. Toughen up. Toughen up. Stop skinning your all teeth. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give us the victory. Again and again.